Okay, I'm the interviewer here, and I just want to say I really admired this novel. And my first question is about the very coy, I'm going to read it so I don't get it wrong. There it is. The very coy P.S., which is, everything I've written is true apart from what I've invented. Which reminds me of something that Samuel Beckett said, which was, no symbols where none intended. I find that very funny, but okay. All right. So, I am interested and have been interested for some time in the idea of autofiction, which I know because of your French involvement that you know about, and to what degree you think of this novel as a work of autofiction. I mean, you're playing with it inside the text, so I'm just curious about how you think of it.
Well, if you think about how I think about it in sense of truth, I had a sort of awakening at one point because I was writing a diary that was the diary to become my novel. And when I was reading writing and reading this diary, at some point I realized that the diary was not telling the truth. That sometimes the factual truth or the can miss the point of the emotional truth.
Yes.
So I got very fascinated by the fact that sometimes I had to lie in order to get closer to the truth. So I would say that everything in the book is emotionally 100% true. Some things are 100% factual true as well, but sometimes I would have to change certain things. I mean, in a life, you meet so many people, you have so many experiences that if you would write all of them, it would be too messy. In a way, you have to simplify literature in order to make it deep, I think.
I couldn't agree, and I've actually written some non-literary scholarly texts about this very idea, about emotional truth. And that actually, despite the fact that there are some analytical philosophers who believe that there's something called a quasi-emotion in literature. You know, why do we care about Anna Karenina? Well, it's a quasi-emotion. No, it's not. Emotions are always real. The text is not.
And also, what I mean, to go back to this, what I found interesting at the same time as I was discovering the truth through lying, I was also discovering that if I would use, my own name, Ragnhild, which is one of the characters in the book, or if I would use like my biography, people I met, or my ex-husband who was French, or places I stayed, then something happened. Something that wouldn't happen if it was just whichever place. So it's also like, even if I say this, that I have to sometimes go through lying, I also have to go through truth in order to, or to expand. Like, I always will use places I've been and people I've met in a way.
Well, okay, so here's a whole theory, which is that memory and imagination are the same faculty. That there's a lot of neuroscientific evidence for this, actually, that people who have damage to a part of their brain called the hippocampus both cannot remember very well, but they also can't imagine very well. So these two things, and of course, when you think about the ancient memory systems, Cicero is someone, but it dates back to the Greeks, which is that artificial memory was all about walking through places. And I, like you, cannot write a work of fiction without having the place securely in mind. So this might be something about, human memory.
Yeah, that something happens. But sometimes what I find interesting as well is that I could write really well about Bö in Buenos Aires, for instance. So it's like this double. Sometimes I have to be in the place and get some details, but sometimes I have to be far away from the place to remember what's important. So I always have to like go close and then go far away. And I think my writing is always switching between these two things, like taking the distance and then going into the shit where I see nothing. Like warm and cold writing, I would call it.
Yeah, no, I think, so I have to ask you, so my second question, and this is, I actually went and made a little list because I thought it was so interesting. And I think it opens up all kinds of questions about the book, is that, first of all, it opens with the words fade in, and it ends with fade out. These are, as everyone knows, cinematic terms. And when you start to look not just at the text itself, but actually at the very small chapter titles, I found, and there might be more, you know, this was just off the top of my head, titles that are references to Godard, Céline, DeLillo, My Life as a Dog, I can't remember who the filmmaker is, Jim Jarmusch, Bataille, Réage, Lars von Trier's, the Marquis de Sade, here's another Jim Jarmusch, let's see, what do I have? Hamsun, of course, La Dolce Vita, Strindberg, Beckett, and I would bet there are more, but those were the ones I came up with. So, my question is not that you've used these references, but that the whole novel, it seems to me, is playing with these two registers of cinema, literature, sometimes song lyrics. I'm worse on song lyrics, but I think you're good on them. Yeah. I think I found a Jacques Brel line.
Yeah.
Yes, oh
absolutely.
good, okay, okay, I got that one.
Yeah.
And that the game, if you will, that's being played here, the games between the husband, you know, among, actually not just between the husband and wife, but also includes some other people, are strongly related to what I call reflective self-consciousness, the idea of watching yourself live. But then there is that other register of not watching yourself, a kind of embodied reality, which is connected to sexuality, but also boredom, you know, the monotony part, and that kind of really embodied human thing. And I just want to know whether you were, to what degree you were consciously planning this back and forth, or this resonance between those two levels
of being close and being far.
Yeah, of being, you know, I mean, the game, you know, the husband Lou is very French, and he's watching himself live, right? Anyway.
Well, so the question is to which degree I was aware of this? Or?
Well, when you were writing, let's just put it that way, because, you know, these things happen. I mean, many things happen for me as I'm writing, but I can also have some kind of, you know, some thoughts in mind. I'm just curious about how you negotiated those two levels of experience.
Because I think simply the fact of actually writing about my life, that in itself makes me an actor and an observer in my life. So the premise is already like from the start. And what I love about that is that the fact of the writing gives me courage or makes me braver, because I can always write about it afterwards, like whatever I experience. And I'm in a way a collector, so therefore I'm also not so scared of also having an unpleasant experience, because I think I should, to a certain degree, of course, I don't want to very bad things to happen to me, but like for instance, the couple, it's about a married couple that are living in an open relationship. The woman is Norwegian, the husband is French, and they're experimenting with love. I mean, they met very young, and they want to see in a way if they can, if their love can survive anything, and so they keep throwing challenges in to like
They
see,
throw obstacles in
exactly,
their own way.
yeah, exactly. Can it survive this? Well, what about this then? And jealousy is a big part. It's not like these people or me are always brave, really, but then to be brave is to dare what you don't dare in a way. Like it's not that they are so free always, and that's what I find interesting. I am in many ways very uptight, and therefore I got really interested in being in an open relationship or challenging my jealousy. So it's not from the lack of it, and but the literature anyway. That was the point. The literature gives this distance, so I can in one way be very like pathetic and also very not seeing my situation, but then through the writing I can observe this person there being really weird and pathetic and stupid or whatever, and I can observe her and then understand her and get her out of that situation somehow. I don't know if that was answering your question.
No, I think this actually brings us naturally into something that also interests me is the role of irony.
Yeah.
Because this is not a text. How should I put it? This is not a naked text.
A naked text?
Yeah, a naked text is just like, we've all read them. No, maybe in Norway people haven't read them, but a naked text is when there really is no irony and it's just like a confession from the guts. Well, there are things in Knusbo that are like that, right? Where it's just kind of there. It's kind of naked. But your text is, I think, always moving into forms of irony about the narrator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think, the funny thing about my book actually, surprisingly in a way to me as well, being so funny, because I never in a way intended to make a funny book, but I mean, it's not that I'm reading it all the time, but when I read it, I actually laugh, and I think it's because the character is putting herself in weird situations, strange situations, and the situations are in a way funny because you don't normally put yourself in those situations. I don't know.
No. Of course.
So there's something about that, or just the directness, but yeah, I think it has a lot of humor, this book.
It does.
Yeah.
I found it. I mean, it wasn't that I was rolling on the floor. But it was that I was continually smiling, and it may be that, as an aging person, in this book I recognized the experimentations of youth.
Yeah.
That sense of, living out these ideas, and maybe the last we've been warned. I was fascinated by the text that Lou, the husband, continues to read, which is Thus Spake Zarathustra, which is, of course, Nietzsche's, I'm putting this as in quotes, comedy. And so I wondered if that was kind of a running subtext for the novel.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, there is this level that the characters are taking everything very seriously, and they're using this book also. The husband is using it almost like a Bible, and that in itself is
funny.
It's funny. But I think, it's very interesting how people react differently to the book. I'm very happy that you got this sort of positive energy and humor, because I think that's how I perceive it, and that's how I lived it mostly as well. And some people think it's very dark and very, like, why do they want to hurt each other so much. And I think it's like these two ways of seeing it. I think more than hurting each other, they're just trying out things, and they're a bit naive maybe in this, and that makes also the humor. But I find it in a way like a book that wants life. I think it's a relationship also that wants love.
And I have to say that maybe as one of the parting remarks here is that I hugely admired the ending. That, for those of you who haven't read it, it turns out very close to the end of the book that the husband is also writing a book.
Yeah.
Without the wife knowing anything about it. She's the writer. She's been working the whole time, and she asks him, so where are you in this book that I didn't know about it? And he says, it's finished. And that's the end. Oh, it's so witty, but it's also quite profound, I think. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.